Hi everyone, I'm Colette from Brand by Me for joining me for our live Steering Your Brand Through Turbulent Times. I think this week we're on episode 4, which is amazing, and it's all about what's stopping you from staying true. So we do what's stopping you sessions every other week. So we start with a theme. So last week we looked at, I'm going to say hi, Sakshi. Um, so we looked at last week how to stay true in these turbulent times. And then we come back and revisit the theme and look at what's stopping us from maybe doing that. So in the last What's Stopping Us session we did a couple of weeks ago, we looked at what's stopping us taking action. And when I was thinking about this theme of what's stopping us staying true, some of those barriers we talked about before, so things like fear of the unknown, worry about getting it wrong, totally apply here. So they're again totally there about they stop us from staying true to who we are and what we stand for in these times. But I don't want to talk about those again. So if you go back and have a look at the episode 2, if you want to understand how to tackle those barriers. And what I want to talk about today, I'm going to start by talking about 3 barriers that I've observed and also that I've been chatting to my network about this week around what's stopping us from staying true. The first barrier, in terms of something that's stopping us staying true to who we are and what we stand for at this time, is really our sort of a need to pursue relevance and maybe a worry that we're not relevant at this time. So this fear of not being relevant, what it makes people do is maybe completely sort of subsume who they are in the circumstances that are going on. So, of course, there's a lot of talk about brand pivoting at the moment, and we certainly need to look at how we're relevant and how what we do applies at this time. But what we shouldn't do is lose sight of who we are in doing so. And you can see that a lot. At an individual level, I see it in people's personal brands where, so a couple of weeks ago, for example, everybody was talking about, how to remote work. Now, of course, there are some people that are best placed to give us some brilliant tips on remote working because it's something they've done forever or it's kind of what they do. But, there are others where actually this is not something you need to talk about just because everybody's focused on it. And actually that sense of chasing relevance can really lead us away from kind of, living who we are and what we stand for. So again, one of the things we've done in this What's Stopping Us session is talk about solutions, obviously, because I can highlight issues and go, actually, that's a real barrier. But what's the solution for that? One of the things that we found really useful at Brand by Me, and actually something we're helping with people with a lot, is really to come back, unsurprisingly, and look at your brand. So look at your purpose and your values and your personality too, as a brand, but even as an individual, as a personal brand. Think about those. And then really revisit those and then ask yourself, okay, how can that help people now? How is that, a real benefit and who's it a real benefit to? And that will lead you to be relevant without starting with, oh my God, what's everyone talking about? We need to go out there and talk about it too, even if it's not really relevant to us. Can you see the difference? So actually, by starting with our brand and then looking at how this is relevant, it allows us to really stay true to who we are. And in fact, for some organizations, like this time has been the making of them, they've really been able to showcase who they are and what they stand for more than ever before. An example of that, I was going to talk about this example later, but I'll talk about it now because I think it's super relevant, is the homeless charity Crisis. So I had the pleasure of speaking to their head of marketing and comms yesterday because I'm doing a panel with her next week. And we were talking about their response at this time. So like many charities, they've set up an emergency appeal. But what she said to me about their emergency appeal, she said, what's really important about our emergency appeal is that we were focusing on the impact on homelessness of this crisis, not on us. So our messaging has not been we're as an organization, we're going to go, we're not going to be able to operate anymore unless, you give us money. Or however true that is, that's really true of many charities. And I'm not saying that's wrong. But for them, they were like, actually, we need to focus this around the impact on homelessness. And she said, one of the brilliant things, I said, that's really interesting. And she said, so one of the things we're doing, we've set up an emergency appeal And we're using the funds to support other homeless charities. So actually ones that are local and grassroots, very, local small shelters who absolutely are a threat and will just go out of business at this time. So we're fundraising, we're using our brand to fundraise and raise funds for other organizations. So then I asked her, I said, God, that's so interesting. Brand point of view, how does that work? Because actually, how do you manage to sort of demonstrate and talk about your role within this when actually you're being maybe a conduit to other organizations? And I think that's a brilliant thing, but how have you made it work from a brand point of view? And she said to me this brilliant thing, which was that actually our purpose, this is a better demonstration of our purpose than anything we've ever done before, because our purpose is together we can end homelessness together. So our purpose has always had that sense of together, and that has enabled us at this time to do something that is supporting and really targeting homelessness as an issue rather than talking about our own plight in this, but actually made sure that we are properly delivering on our purpose. And I just thought that was brilliant. So, in terms of if we get it right, we can be incredibly relevant and timely and really support and help at this time. But we can also do it in a way that's very true to who we are. And that crisis example is just a brilliant example of that. So that's the first barrier, is the pursuit of relevance. And hopefully, the example I've given has really helped us understand how we could be relevant and still stay true to who we are and what we stand for at an individual or organizational level. So the second one, and this was interesting. So I shared on LinkedIn. In fact, I shared last week's YouTube live, the recording of it on LinkedIn. And then I said that we were going to be talking about what's stopping us staying true this week. And one of the things that came out, people said actually staying true is so interesting at an individual level. And I talked about one of my pet hates, which is overuse of the A word, the A word being authenticity. And one of the barriers, I think, around staying true to who we are and what we stand for at this time, at a brand level and at an individual level, is fundamentally not understanding what true actually looks like for us, or what true looks like for our organization. So if we don't understand fully what being true to who we are and what we stand for looks like, or how we should behave in that way, of course, at this time, it's going to be impossible. We're facing uncertainty on an unprecedented scale. So, and I think the overuse of the word authenticity, or just people just banding it around saying, yeah, be authentic to who you are, is one of the things that really is a barrier to people being able to truly stay true to who they are and what they stand for at this time. And actually, I think this hits individuals, but also organizations too. So I'll give you another example from a few years ago now, back when Innocent Smoothies was it was still a new brand, but it had achieved such a level of success and maybe was completely breaking the mold in terms of food brands, that actually was generating a lot of interest in marketing terms from other marketeers. People are looking at Innocent, and it was like always held up as the case study. Okay, Innocent is the case study. Now, obviously, for Innocent, authenticity was absolutely key. And it came from the truth of their products, the purity of the products, the lack of artificial ingredients. It drove everything. It drove a sense of them being, super authentic, super transparent, really sort of very warm in the way they communicate, and all sorts of things in terms of how they were staying true to their brand. And they said, it's all about for us being authentic. Other food brands looked at this and were like, yes, that's very important. As a food brand, we must be authentic too. But rather than understanding the innocent sense of authenticity was about reflecting who they are and the purity of their ingredients and offer across everything they do, other brands sort of mimicked it. So they created like packaging that had like similar handmade fonts to and an illustrated design to Innocent. Or they started speaking in a very innocent tone of voice on their social media without understanding that actually authentic to them, that was what that and still deliver your same old product. What they should have been looking at is actually what does it mean to be true to ourselves, and then how can we demonstrate that? So you can see an example of actually, if you don't know what true looks like and you've simply got this vague sense of authenticity that you borrowed from other brands, it's not going to help. And I'm seeing the same thing now. Now, don't get me wrong, I really love the outpouring of empathy, kindness, and generosity that's happening at the moment at an individual and a brand level. But equally, what I've started seeing, particularly on TV, and I've been talking to a number of people on this, is brands where they're sort of just maybe creating an artificial sense of warmth. We're all in it together. And actually, that's not demonstrating that activity at all. They've simply done a brand ad that's we're all in it together at this time. We're here, we're with you, but without actually demonstrating that through action. Coming back to the first theme of our live, and I think that's something where actually not understanding what staying true to us, not understanding what being authentic means at this time, and just banding around kind of a vague, yeah, we need to be authentic, is where that's going to get brands into trouble. So again, I think I've talked about the innocent example, the sense of what other people are doing to be authentic. So that's the second barrier. The final one that I'm going to talk about, and as I'm talking, I'd love you to think about what are some of the challenges that are stopping you from staying true, or things you're seeing, things you're observing in other brands or individuals, and drop them in the comments, because I'll come back and reference them, and we can have a chat about stuff that is challenging and blocking you towards the end of this. But my third barrier is around how to sum this up. Poor processes and internal workings. Now, I'll explain what I mean from this, because that's not particularly obvious. But when I said, I put on LinkedIn that we're doing this topic, what's stopping you from staying true? Someone commented and said, what's stopping you is such a great question. It's a question that this person is a coach. They use a lot in their coaching, because what it does, it unblocks immediately the barriers that are holding us back. And it's exactly the same thing as we've been talking about in terms of staying true. But actually, often what it unblocks, that what's stopping us, is very internalized and mental barriers at individuals that block us from staying, that are blocking us. So they are called actual blocks. They're called mental blocks. They can be negative thoughts. They can be assumptions. They can be beliefs that we've built up. And those things, I think, in terms of what's stopping us staying true, that's incredibly, incredibly, key at this time, is that if we've got negative beliefs, assumptions, thoughts, and we're being triggered at this time, it's very, very easy and understandable that we lose that sense of who we are. I found it myself really, fleeting moments, because I said the other week, got my brand up on my wall, got my personal brand on my phone. So I find that helps kind of bring me back to who I am. And I'm going to talk about some other stuff that I do at the end of this. But actually, if you have some sort of maybe some poor or negative stuff going on internally, it can really block you from staying true to who you are. And at a time when we're facing unprecedented change and uncertainty, we can be triggered into those things coming to the fore. So it's really important that we have processes, and this is something I've worked on a lot since starting my business, is have processes to make sure that I'm able to identify and counter those negative beliefs and blocks. I'm not saying they won't happen. Of course they do. I've said that. I've been really open about it. But it's important that I develop processes and mechanisms that can help me negate the impact of those and really keep staying true to who I am at this time, because actually the world needs us to do that more than ever. Interestingly, when we talk about this, it's not just the case for individuals, though. I fundamentally believe that organizations, poor internal workings, or some poor processes or unmanaged processes in terms of how we do things internally, will block us from being able to stay true to who we are and what we stand for externally. For example, if your organization has a set of negative beliefs, or even people internally have spotted behaviors that are very out of step with what you're saying in terms of your external messaging, that will immediately undermine your organization's ability to stay true, because people in the organization won't believe it, and therefore they won't do the activities that are going to help you stay true. So again, this idea that we have these mental blocks and beliefs is the same thing at an organizational cultural level. We can have negative beliefs and assumptions that will block us from staying true at our time, because they block our employees. So it's really important that we are making sure that we are helping our people. One, that we are, delivering on who we are and what we say, and we're really staying true to that. We're identifying anything that is not the case, and we're being very open and transparent and visible with our employees at this time, so that we can all feel comfortable, and our internal processes, and we're identifying as well the processes that are going to really help us stay true to who we are. So an example might be making sure that people super understand who we are and what we stand for, and that's front and center at this time, and maybe helping people understand how that applies right now, and helping people navigate anything they see as a barrier that's going to stop us doing that. So at this point, they're my three barriers that I wanted to talk about in terms of what's stopping us. The pursuit of relevance. If we are fundamentally allowing, all of everything we say and do and behave to be subsumed by COVID-19 without a clear sense of who we are and what we stand for and why we do what we do, that's something that can stop us from staying true. The second one, not knowing what true looks like, or having some sense of, fake authenticity that's not real to who we are, can really stop us from staying actually true at this time, because we're not clear on what that looks like, or we're relying on somebody else's sense of true to define who we are. And finally, if we have internal workings that have, that are negative or poor or undressed, and they will stop us from being true too. So again, I'd love it in the comments if you could let me know what you think of those. Let me know if any of them are impacting you, and just feel free to comment as we go on. What I wanted to have a quick conversation about now is I guess the conversation about, should all brands be staying true to who they are at this time? So obviously, in what's stopping us staying true, I've made an assumption that staying true to who we are is a good thing. And for many of us, most of us, the absolute 99% of us, it is, because who we are and what we stand for is brilliant. What we stand for is meaningful and relevant and awesome at this time. And we really need to showcase this because the world needs it. But there are some brands that, even if they wouldn't articulate this in that way, there are some brands maybe that are not demonstrating or haven't historically prized the elements of kind of who we are, who we need to be at this time. So if you are a brand that has historically been very, very profit centric, above customer centric, for example, or if you have developed a set of values that inadvertently has made you very elitist, and maybe very, works against, maybe having a very diverse and inclusive mindset. These are brands where really maybe it's time that you stop being true to who you are, and you start looking at an opportunity to represent some of these characteristics that we've talked about. So we look at how we can embed kindness, empathy, generosity, community, a sense of a humanity first, rather than organization first or profit first. And if that is not who you are, maybe it's time that you should stop being who you are and start representing these characteristics. So again, and one of the discussions we've been talking about is the fact that actually at this stage, some of the stuff that we really, in terms of staying true to who we are, we need to really stay true to our most human and best characteristics. And obviously, if a brand hasn't been used to demonstrating those, maybe the question is not staying true to who we are, but it's really reevaluating who we are so that we can be our best selves. So that was just a little thought I had around maybe. And again, I'd love it to hear if you think there are brands really that really shouldn't be staying true to who they are at this time. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. The final thing I think I'm going to say about staying true is a conversation I had yesterday with a very lovely and amazing CEO. I hope she's watching, Shazia Janai from Neuro Insight. We spoke yesterday actually just about sort of leading our businesses at this time, and we had a really inspirational chat around brands and how they need to drive change. And one of the things that she said was really interesting. A previous organization, before she was CEO of Neuro Insight, she said that her organization, as well as having a clear sense of who they are through their values and purpose, had this idea of not values, what we're not. And I think part of staying true to who we are and what we stand for, particularly at this time, is being really clear what we're not, so we don't stray into very negative behaviors just because of panic, or because, we don't know what we're doing, we're reacting. And I love this idea of not values. One of the exercises we do at Brand by Me with our clients to really sense check and stress test our brands is to talk about who we are and who we're not. Or, what we must do and what we must never do. So that idea of what we're not, what we're never, is a really good way at this time to just make sure that we can stay true to who we are by being clear about what we're not and making sure we don't inadvertently get pulled into doing stuff that's that, because that stuff that we're not will absolutely undermine and prevent ourselves from being our true selves. So again, little shout out for comments, because I'll come back to the end. But I'm going to sum up because I'm looking at the time. We've been on for a good 20 minutes, which is flown by. I hope for you as well. So to be true at this time, the things stopping us, pursuit of relevance. So it's really important that we lead and understand who we are and what we stand for, and then we look at how that's relevant at the time, rather than starting looking at crisis first and then working backwards, because that's never going to work in terms of us staying true. Maybe making sure we're understanding what true looks like for us, because if we don't, it can, and if we have an artificial sense of what authenticity is that's not based on who we are, it's really difficult for us to stay true, obviously. And then also the final thing is about making sure that we have the right internal workings. Now that's things around our mindset and our countering negative beliefs, but also at an organizational level, that our internal processes are set up to help us demonstrate who we are and stay true to our best selves, and they don't inadvertently undermine us, and they also hold us accountable, so that if we are doing stuff that feels like we're not, we're immediately brought back on track. So the final thing I want to leave you on is, I guess I said at the beginning, maybe an additional thought on how to stay true at this time. And there have been a couple of things that I found so useful and brilliant. I just wanted to share them with you. The first one, and I've referenced a couple of conversations I've had this week, is that one of the best ways of staying true to who you are is to find things and surround yourself and make sure you're reaching out and connecting with people that inspire you, but also remind you of why you do what you do. That's really important. So I said that, I've had a number of brilliant conversations with charity leaders and organizational leaders this week. And it's totally reminded me of who we are as Brand With Me and what we stand for and why that's so relevant at this time, and helps me really stay true to who I am, even if I'm finding circumstances quite challenging at the moment. The second one, and actually that's true of us as individuals, but also organizations. So I remember a brilliant conversation, and I actually caught up with them a couple of weeks ago. I'm a mentor for Santander and for their Women in Business program. And so I did a podcast for them a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to the Santander team. And they said one of the brilliant things about talking to women in business, and talking to people involved in the program, particularly whether they're mentees or mentors, that it really reminds them why they do it, and it really fuels them when they hear about the impact. So last year I was a mentee, and I had such a great experience of being a mentee and got so much value that I wanted to be a mentor this year. And so, and just, they said that in connecting and making sure where they're talking to mentees is a way that they, as a team, as the Santander Breakthrough team, really are able to remind themselves of kind of why they do this. And it's really challenging now, but it kind of gives them that fuel too. So it's as important for organizations as it is for individuals to make sure you are connecting with and reaching out to brands and people that can really remind you of what's staying. For this week, I'm looking to see in the comments. I can't see any comments. So I hope that this has been useful for you. Please do, if you have any further questions, you can always, reach out on our social media. So I'm at Brand by Colette on both social media, including LinkedIn. I can see a question. Could I provide some tips for startups and emerging brands? Yeah, brilliant point, because actually when you're a startup, you don't have maybe that legacy or that understanding yet of who you are, and maybe what true looks like for you in terms of real world examples of what that looks like. But what you do have as a startup, more than businesses, and what you have as the advantage is that you have a massively powerful vision. So I think it's worth thinking about that startup vision. What compelled you to start up? What compelled you to kind of launch this brand? Revisit that. and then look at, okay, why is that relevant now? The other thing as a startup you can do is really delve into your personality and values. So the strengths of your personality. Look at how you want to do things. Now, as an individual, so startups are very frequently founder-led. So when I started Brand by Me, our personality came from my own personality strengths. So one of them, for example, I talk about a lot is straightforward. So you can see, and hopefully you get a sense of that, but being straightforward is something. So we don't use jargon or big brand models or, you know, very like intellectual language to talk about brand. We're very straightforward, and we're also it leads into kind of our sense of integrity too. So that was something that's my personal characteristic, but it also has fueled the way that I do business and the way that I set up my company Brand by Me and the way that then now our team as Brand by Me operate too. So for you, if you're starting up or your brand is still very new, you delve into those strengths of how you do things as individuals and what connects you and kind of what those strengths and the best bits of your personality are. And again, look at, okay, why might people need that more than ever? So another thing, one of the things that is one of our personality traits is energy that lights up the room. That's a Brand by Me trait, but it's also very true of me, and hopefully you get a sense of that. Again, at this time, I'm facilitating a panel next week for an organisation, and they said, you know, more than ever, what we're really excited about having you facilitating is just the energy that you bring. And they've seen that. They weren't, you know, just saying that for the sake of it. They've seen me do other stuff, and they're like, the energy you bring is so vital this time. So again, understanding, you know, maybe from things that people have said that you're great at, even as you're starting up, understanding, you know, what you stand for, why you set up in the first place, and how you're going to do things in a way that's great. And I'm really sort of using those as a bedrock for your decisions, even as you're starting out and there's loads of decisions. I can't stress it more. There's also some stuff, if you look on our blog, brandby.me, and maybe, if you search in the search bar purpose, you will find some articles I wrote when I was starting out about the importance of purpose and personality and stuff like that. And because I wrote them when we were starting out as Brand by Me, they'll be very relevant to you time. So I hope that helps. Hope that helps you. Are there any more questions at this point? So it's been lovely. Thank you so much. I love this topic, actually. True to who we are is kind of the core bit of brand for me, like understanding personality and values and the power of it. And I know how tough it is at this time. So hopefully these tips have helped you sort of understand how you can stay true. And I would encourage you, honestly, to really delve into the best of kind of who you are, who your best self is, and look at what that means and why that's relevant, because it will be relevant at this time. As I said, look on our blog, brandby.me, for some earlier stuff we've done around purpose and personality. If you're sitting here thinking, I don't know what true looks like, it will come from your purpose and personality. And we've got some stuff on there on how to define it. Or, of course, reach out to me personally via our website. The other thing is do subscribe if you haven't already. If you've liked what you've seen today, subscribe. And more importantly, share this, because we get more viewers every week live and more views. But I'd love you to share this with brands who you think can really benefit from these lessons on how to steer brands through turbulent times. So whether you know people that are really looking to evolve their leadership brand or personal brand level, or whether you're looking at kind of people within organizations that really want to steer their brand and maybe lead positive change at this time. If you want them to see it, I'd love it if you shared this. That's it from me this week. Thank you so much for bearing with me. It's been awesome. Next week's theme is how to stay visible. And thank you for those of you that also said thank you. We'll keep saying thank you. I'm going to stop because otherwise I'll keep going on forever. Next week's is staying visible, which again is something that I've had lived experience of, the difficulty of staying visible at this time. So we'll be talking about that next week, how to stay visible in turbulent times. Look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much, everybody, and speak soon. Bye.